Hey guys, Aaron CybertronVGC here, and today I'm back with another episode of Road to Rank, where I climb the online Regulation D VGC ladder in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and provide live commentary as I go. In this video, I'm going to be trying out a really fun team featuring all kinds of underused Pokemon, including Iron Valiant with Focus Sash and Wide Guard, Galarian Moltres with Citrus Berry, Fire Terra, and Tailwind, Scope Lens Decidueye with Leaf Blade, as well as Spirit Shackle, and Clear Amulet Ceruledge. The general idea behind this team is that you have a lot of Pokemon your opponents are not going to have experience fighting against, and I just am really excited to try out all of these different Pokemon and strategies. So, as always, I'll do a quick breakdown of the team, but if you want to just skip to the battles, check out the timestamps down below, and thanks so much as always for joining me. If you enjoy, would appreciate it if you consider leaving a like in the video or subscribing to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Anyway, let's get started. Breaking things down, as always, rental, pace, and team creator are linked down in the description below, and question of the day, I want to know what you thought about the brand new DLC. This team was piloted by a player called Brian Kim, who finished in the top 64 at the Pittsburg Regional Championships with 6 wins and 3 losses. He had modified the EVs for this team, but the original team credit is attributed to a Japanese player, and it's just a fascinating team with so many unique picks. So, the first Pokemon I want to talk about on this team is Decidueye. Decidueye is not exactly the most impressive starter Pokemon, but you've got a couple of interesting things going for it. First of all, its ability Long Reach, of course, which means that the moves don't make contact with the target. That's really nice, especially against, of course, Rocky Helmet Amoonguss. And Scope Lens is a cool combination to have with Leaf Blade here, because you have a 50% chance to get a critical hit with that combination, and that's really nice in just bypassing things like Intimidate and just dealing significant damage as well. To me, the coolest thing about Decidueye, though, is its move Spirit Shackle, which prevents the target from switching out. So you can use that to put your opponents in pretty tricky positions. And Shadow Sneak is just a nice move to finish off Pokemon, break through Focus Sashes, and deal super effective damage into things like Flutter Mane, for example. I think one of the downsides for Decidueye is that it does have a lot of weaknesses that are common in this format. Fire, Dark, for example, Ghost as well. And so Water Terra here is kind of a nice defensive Terra, but this Decidueye is not exactly very bulky. So I often bring it when I think I'm not going to really feel forced to use my Terra, and I can get a lot of value out of Spirit Shackle in particular. But Leaf Blade obviously just a really nice move, especially into a lot of the Water type Pokemon that exist in the format. Iron Valiant is one of the other reasons I was drawn to this team, and the general idea behind Valiant is that it is just one of the faster Pokemon in the format, and Fairy Fighting is actually really unique coverage. I feel like when I think about Spirit Break as a move, I'm just used to seeing it on something like Grimmsnarl, so I don't expect it to actually deal that much damage, but this Iron Valiant can deal like 50-60+% with the super effective Spirit Break, for example, and having Fairy Fighting coverage just allows you to hit a lot of things in the format for super effective. For example, Heatran with Close Combat, Urshifu, either Urshifu with Spirit Break, Chi-Yu with Close Combat as well, and you also have Wide Guard and Focus Sash on this Pokemon, so it ends up being a fairly valuable utility Pokemon as well. I think Wide Guard is honestly just really underplayed in this format. Think about all the spread moves that exist. Heat Wave from Chi-Yu, for example, Dazzling Gleam from Flutter Mane, Earthquake from Landorus Therian. You also have Bleak Windstorm from Tornadus, for example. And so being able to Wide Guard and protect yourself from all of those moves, I think, is really, really essential. And Ghost Terra here is just valuable, so you can lead Valiant, potentially get around the turn 1 Fake Out, for example. The Valiant here is obviously not bulky, but Focus Sash I think is a really valuable item. I find that most of my opponents just don't expect the Focus Sash, and Valiant can often be an effective late game sweeper as well, where you just outspeed everything on your opponent's end and just deal massive amounts of damage. Ceruledge is the third Pokemon that I was kind of drawn to with this team, and we've actually used Ceruledge in previous formats in Scarlet and Violet, but this Pokemon sees not very much play in this current format. One of the ideas behind Ceruledge is that it actually has a pretty decent matchup into Iron Hands, which of course is one of the most common Pokemon in the format. For example, when you look at Iron Hands' moveset, it'll often use moves like Fake Out, Drain Punch, Heavy Slam, and Wild Charge. Well, out of all of those, Wild Charge is the only move you can really use to damage Ceruledge, and Ceruledge can just use Bitter Blade to heal back a lot of that damage. You also have Shadow Sneak for more priority, and Ally Switch. Ally Switch is one of those moves that I think can be really hard to fight against, especially because Ceruledge has a great typing in Ghost and Fire, right? So being able to, for example, soak up an attack that otherwise would be super effective against your other Pokemon is really valuable, and it's one of those moves that is just really tricky to fight against because your opponents will also always have to kind of predict, are they going to go for it, are they not going to go for it? I think in the closed team sheet environment, if you're using this team on ladder, for example, and your opponent hasn't seen this team, Ally Switch can just single-handedly win you a game where it saves you one turn, and that's often all you need to actually get the victory. Grass Terra here, really nice defensively, and of course helps out against things like Amoonguss as well. To round things out, you've got Galarian Moltres. This is a bulky set with Citrus Berry and Tailwind. I think one of the fun things behind this set is that Berserk can activate twice when you've got the Citrus Berry combination. So they'll hit you, you will fall under 50%, you get the Berserk boost, you heal back up, and then Berserk can activate again. I've had that happen before. And Fire Terror here, just really nice defensively to help you against, for example, Fairy type moves, as well as all of the other offensive types that exist, like Ice, because Chien-Pao can be pretty annoying. And Tailwind is nice for this team because you're not using like a ton of speed, or I should say, like, these Pokemon do have speed investment, but for example, like, you're not max speed Flutter. Iron Valiant still gets outsped by the super fast Pokemon in this format, like Flutter, as well as Choice Scarf Pokemon and Chien-Pao as well. So Moltres is nice just to further increase your speed of what is already like decently speedy Pokemon. Flutter on this team is a really fun booster energy set with Fairy Terra. It's special attack booster, so you just deal massive amounts of damage. The one thing to call out here is that you've got Substitute. Substitute's nice against a bunch of different things that exist. For example, helps out against Amoonguss, which is going to want to try to spore you. Helps out against Trick Room-oriented compositions where you can use Substitute to slowly stall out their Trick Room. Helps out against Sucker Punch from something like Chien-Pao as well. And so it's just a nice utility move that can give you a lot of advantages in matchups that otherwise you might struggle a little bit against. The final Pokemon is Gastrodon. This Gastrodon is just a super bulky set, and the idea is that you can obviously prevent Surging Strikes from hitting all of your other Pokemon, because otherwise Surging Strikes from Water Urshifu is just such a big problem, right? Hits this for super effective and deals massive amounts of damage and can get a one-hit knockout on a Flutter, for example, and with lack of bulk on Iron Valiant, I think Urshifu in general is just pretty scary, but with the Gastrodon, you just have something to soak up that damage. This Pokemon is also quite nice if you're going up against Trick Room-oriented compositions because its base speed is just pretty low, so you can bring Gastrodon, go for Yawn onto those teams, and then play from there. So a lot of different ways that you can play with this team. I think I normally ask myself, first of all, do I need Tailwind? Because if so, I'm going to lead Galarian Moltres. I think Galarian Moltres with Valiant and Flutter, for example, are really strong leads. And if I don't think I need Tailwind, then I ask myself, okay, like, can I take advantage of, for example, Decidueye going for Spirit Shackle and trapping things in? Now, this team doesn't really have setup, right? You're not, like, boosting your own stats. It's really just looking for ways to deal as much damage as possible. So it's really asking yourself, okay, what are the ways that I can hit my opponent for super effective damage? And also, more importantly, how do I make sure I actually get that damage off before just getting knocked out? So, yeah. That's it for a quick breakdown. Now let's highlight some weaknesses. So in terms of things that I've run into that have given me trouble, the first thing to note is that you have Triple Ghost on this team. Triple Ghost, by the way, is actually really nice if you're going up against things like Iron Hands, which can threaten with Fake Out, but part of the problem with the Triple Ghost combination is that you share some weaknesses. For example, Ghost type attacks and Dark type attacks can be really, really scary. I've struggled against like really fast Flutter Mane, which is able to just Shadow Ball everything, but bulky enough to survive, for example, Shadow Sneak. I've also struggled against Dark, Terra, Sucker Punch, Chien-Pao, which can just pressure all of these Pokemon with a knockout, for example. So you have to be really careful because obviously Chien-Pao and Flutter Mane are both pretty common Pokemon in this format, and if you over-index on bringing all of your Ghost types, you might struggle just in terms of defensive synergies. I think for Iron Valiant, I have struggled against fighting against Intimidate with this Pokemon, for example. If it's Intimidated, it just doesn't do that much damage. Rocky Helmet's a pretty annoying item as well. I've run into Rocky Helmet Indeedee and Rocky Helmet Amoonguss. That's caused me some troubles. Indeedee, by the way, just a Pokemon that can be pretty scary because your Ghost type attacks can just be redirected into Follow Me. And the Ghost type attacks on this team are honestly really strong, so kind of limiting those options can make it a little bit more tricky for you earlier on in the battle. I think in general, one of the things more like one of the trends that I've lost against is just getting outpaced by my opponent. Galarian Moltres is really nice for setting up Tailwind, but I've had games where I set up Tailwind and I just don't really make use of those turns well enough to actually get knockouts quickly enough. Part of the problem is that Galarian Moltres just doesn't do that much damage, right? And so even if you set up Tailwind, you're not necessarily getting big knockouts. And then if your opponents are able to stall out your Tailwind and then outpace you, that can cause some really big issues as well. And for example, certain Pokemon just can be walled by other Pokemon. Like Iron Valiant particularly struggles a lot against Amoonguss. You can't go for like much damage with Spirit Break or close combat, and a well-positioned Amoonguss, for example, I think can give this team a lot of trouble as well. So yeah, I think this team is really interesting because there isn't like one Pokemon that's carrying the game. You're kind of just using Pokemon with strong stats and attacks to slowly kind of overwhelm your opponent, and that makes for a pretty unique playstyle, I would say. But yeah, overall, that's it for a couple of weaknesses. Let's get into these battles. All right, we've got Flutter Mane, Iron Hands, Cresselia, Ursaluna, Torkoal, and Gastrodon. Water Terra Decidueye looks awesome here. Ghost coverage and grass coverage is really good. And one of the cool things with this team is we can just lead double Ghost immediately, which is really solid. So I'm thinking like Fluttermane plus Decidueye, Gastrodon plus Iron Valiant in the back. I do think Ceruledge is interesting in this one because it does completely wall the Torkoal thanks to Flash Fire. My problem is I'm not even doing that much with it. And I think Galarian Moltres doesn't come out in this matchup, mainly because Tailwind is just a fairly useless move on it in this matchup. And my opponent's team is fairly Trick Room oriented. But yeah, I think like one of the cool things about this team is that you do have triple Ghost with Decidueye, Ceruledge, and the Fluttermane. So it makes Fake Out a little bit less effective, right? Like let's say they lead Iron Hands, which they do. One thing I can consider doing is just trapping it in immediately. And right now we're immune to Fake Out with both Pokemon, which is awesome. Okay, so we get the booster. No reveal on their Fluttermane. With this, I think I prefer to just double protect on turn 1, and what I'm scouting out for is like a potential Terror on their Fluttermane. I think Choice Specs Flutter here certainly makes a lot of sense, and I want to see if they potentially lock into attack. And Iron Hands can't click Fake Out here, but yeah, one thing I wanted to think about is whether or not Iron Hands goes for like a Terra, for example. They're actually just going to switch into Cresselia, which is fine. Okay. The main thing I'm trying to scout out for here is what does their Fluttermane go for, right? Because I think Specs Flutter just going for a Moonblast or Shadow Ball into one of these two slots makes sense. Ah! Trick Room. So with that Trick Room, I'm going to guess that it is Focus Sash. Because there's no way you would make that play otherwise, because you're at risk of just getting knocked out. Given that, I think we have some interesting options here. The first is to go for something like Substitute and Spirit Shackle, which would prevent this from switching. Alternatively, I can just angle to double up onto this right now. Like, I could see Flutter switching out straight into Ursaluna. So I'm thinking about just Moonblasting and Leaf Blading right now. Nope, they just stay in. Okay, that's fine. Ice Beam into Decidueye. Ah, they're really slow. Whoa, what? Definitely did not expect that. Okay. We get Leaf Blade and Moonblast, but this now grants them a free switch in into Ursaluna, which is a little bit scary. The upside is that Decidueye actually completely walls Ursaluna. So it's probably min speed Flutter. Normally with those Focus Sash Flutters, I expect it to still be like modest max, just with Trick Room. But that's not the case here, and they're actually going to bring out the Torkoal. Okay. This is where having the Iron Valiant in the back is really interesting because I can use this to wide guard. So I think right now what I'm going to do is just go for a... I'm going to sacrifice the Fluttermane. Shadow Ball into Torkoal, protect with the Decidueye, get out Iron Valiant, then go for wide guard. And I can wide guard and then Terra as well. They're going to be Fire Terra. Yep. And we know their last one is Iron Hands as well, which Gastrodon has a pretty good matchup into. So, did not expect Fluttermane to be the Trick Room user in this one, but I think it's still okay. Mainly thanks to wide guard. I think they're not going to expect that. Okay, so Torkoal is going to get the Eruption off. Yep. And the huge thing here is if it turns out to be, for example, Choice Specs on the Torkoal, then this wide guard is going to completely shut them down. As they Ice Beam into us. Yep. So now let's bring out Iron Valiant and get a nice little surprise. Okay. I think one thing to still consider is who I want to Terra throughout the course of this game. I think Water Terra and Decidueye makes the most sense here, so I'm down personally to go for Wide Guard, Terra, and Spirit Shackle. And if this is Choice Specs Torkoal, we'll be able to not only bypass the Eruption, but also just trap them in and just continue to spam Wide Guard in subsequent turns and render that Torkoal completely useless. So this actually could just win us the game right now. Like, this is a really unique combination that generally people aren't going to expect to play against, right? There's Wide Guard from Iron Valiant. Okay. Yep. Beautiful. They go for Eruption. Maybe a Psychic here onto Iron Valiant this time around. So that would have been a reason to potentially consider tearing the Valiant instead. But it's just Ice Beam. Okay, that's fine. Yep, not too much damage. And now we've gotten Spirit Shackle off, so the Torkoal now is trapped in. Meaning that if you are Eruption, you're just locked into that, and I can just keep Wide Guarding. And it's the last turn of Trick Room as well. So I'm just going to Wide Guard again here, and then go for Spirit Shackle now onto Cresselia. So we'll see. Is Torkoal choiced? A lot of Torkoals are choiced. Sometimes they are Charcoal with Earth Power. Okay, so they do have Earth Power here. But that's fine. I honestly don't mind that too much. Yeah, they're going to go for the double up here onto the Valiant, but the reason I'm okay with this is because I get the free switching into Gastrodon right now, and Gastrodon just beats the Torkoal unless you have like a surprise Solar Beam, but we also should just outpace you, right? So, okay, we've trapped Cresselia in as well. Trick Room expires. Now you just bring Gastrodon out. I think the main debate here is, given that it's not specs on the Torkoal, I could consider, say, doubling up onto the Cresselia right now, since I think this going for Protect and this Trick Room makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't mind that. Spirit Shackle and Ice Beam into Cress. Beautiful. Torkoal protects. I think my main question is whether or not the Cresselia has a Citrus Berry, or is bulky enough to actually survive Ice Beam here. Oh, it does survive. That's still fine, though, because now I just Shadow Sneak into the Cresselia and Earth Power into Torkoal for a double KO. Yeah. And if we get that knockout immediately, I feel like I should just win the game off of it, because then you just don't set up Trick Room, which is obviously really good for us. But I think the Gastrodon should still be able to secure this endgame for us. I think the one thing I'm worried about is like a surprise Solar Beam from Torkoal right now, but otherwise we're good. Yep, they just go for Eruption. Perfect. Wonder if that KOs Decidueye. This is still a really powerful move. Yeah, it does. Okay. But the reason I'm fine with this, it did actually get a crit, but I don't know. Given how much it did to Gastrodon, I'm guessing Decidueye wouldn't have survived that. It's kind of close, but Decidueye is not exactly the bulkiest Pokemon. 78 base HP, 100 base special defense. Cool. Earth Power KOs Torkoal, and this is the end game I was looking for. Right now, you're going to bring out the Iron Hands. I can just go for Protect, Yawn, Earth Power, and with us having the Yawn specifically, as well as Leftovers, it's really hard to see Iron Hands winning this end game unless they crit Drain Punch immediately onto me. So, part of the upside for this matchup was that I think Gastrodon was just a pretty good Pokemon into Cresselia and Cresselia and Torkoal, as well as the Iron Hands, right? Like, they don't really have super good Gastrodon answers other than the Ursaluna, but I think Triple Ghost on this team probably scared away the Ursaluna a little bit. I would normally click Protect here, but I'm actually worried about, like, a random Swords Dance immediately here, because I can survive a Drain Punch anyway, and if you go for Fake Out, that confirms that you don't have Swords Dance, basically. So I'm actually just going to click Yawn here. And they actually just go straight for Drain Punch. Okay. Cool, that's fine by me. I'm still worried about Swords Dance existing on that set right now. See, the truth is, like, I should survive another Drain Punch here anyway. Basically, what I'm worried about is it's Swords Dances as I Protect. But I feel like if you had Swords Dance, you would have just Swords Dance last turn. So, I'll Protect. If they end up actually having Swords Dance, then kudos to them. But even then, like, you would still have to get an immediate wake up, right? But basically, like, Swords Dance, Drain Punch, Thunder Punch, Detect, there's a Protect Iron Hands is pretty common. But, okay, no Swords Dance here. I think that should just win us the game, barring an immediate wake into a critical hit as well. Because now I just start clicking Earth Power. So, yeah. I think Decidueye plus Iron Valiant, though, both really did a lot of work in this game. Like, having one turn of Wide Guard was a really big deal to catch my opponent off guard. Their Flutter main set definitely caught me off guard because it was slower than both our Flutter and Decidueye. So, it makes sense given that I had Trick Room, but I was expecting the Focus Sash Trick Room set that is just, like, max speed, max special attack anyway. Okay, that doesn't even look like it's Assault Vest on hands. And, yeah, that's because it's Citrus Berry. Interesting. You don't see that item too much on Iron Hands. Does make me wonder if it is Swords Dance, and they just opted not to click it. But Trick Room expires now. Yeah, their only way of winning is to get an immediate wake up with hands and crit this turn. Because otherwise, another 2 Earth Power should just get the knockout. And they stay asleep. Perfect. Even if they woke up there, though, it's like you get Drain Punch off, but it doesn't do enough into me. And then I don't think Iron Hands would heal enough where it would survive another Earth Power, especially because they're not Assault Vested here. So, Gastro just super good into their core, but I think what was critical here was having Wide Guard to bypass a turn of the Trick Room, and then also having Decidueye trapping in my opponent so that you couldn't just switch in Iron Hands immediately. Because the Water Terra Decidueye defensively was quite good into both the Torkoal as well as the Cresselia. So early game definitely caught me off guard, especially with the Flutter Mane underspeeding the Decidueye in Trick Room, and I thought they would like, I was prepared for Flutter Mane to set up Trick Room turn 1 and then like a Ursaluna switch in on turn 2, so I was trying to cover for that with that Moonblast plus Leaf Blade play, and in the end my Flutter didn't actually really accomplish very much, and it felt like I could have gotten a lot with it in this game because it could thread in their Flutter Mane with a super effective Shadow Ball, could have Moonblasted into the Iron Hand slot as well, for example, but even though we went down in the early game, Decidueye and Iron Valiant plus Gastron was enough to pull it back for us, which I think is awesome. No way. I recently featured a team with Glastrier on the channel, and we are fighting against it. I don't know if this is the exact same team. I don't remember if the Pokemon are in the same order, but that team had a lot of interesting sets, like super bulky Flutter Mane. The idea is like Glastrier is just really bulky and can Iron Defense and Body Press up and set up against physically oriented teams. And the team also has things like Leech Seed on Rillaboom, for example, as well as, I believe it was Life Orb on Heatran. So, yeah, pretty interesting to go up against it here. So, against Glastrier, we don't have that many special attackers. Our best bet would be utilizing Flutter Mane. This is Wide Guard on the... Yeah, Wide Guard on the Iron Valiant, which I think can be really valuable here. I think being able to like prevent switches with Decidueye is interesting. And another thing to consider is if like we force a Terra out from the Glastrier, then we can pressure with like critical hit Leaf Blades, which is kind of cool. So I think that's nice. I'm honestly thinking something like Decidueye plus the, yeah, like this duo with Flutter Mane and Ceruledge in the back. I think Galarian Moltres is actually also really good here, thanks to Air Slash and its ability to wall both Urshifu as well as Rillaboom. In retrospect, I actually think Galarian Moltres is probably a stronger pick than the Ceruledge. But Ceruledge's appeal is being able to heal back with Bitter Blade. It also completely walls the Rillaboom here. And it's going to be Heatran plus Urshifu. Okay. I think here on turn 1, I pressure with something like Shadow Sneak and Close Combat onto either slot immediately. If I were my opponent, I would personally probably go Terra Heatran, protect Urshifu, and then Heat Wave. But if I could knock this out immediately, that would be amazing. I just want to be careful protecting in front of Urshifu, right? But, okay. I'm down to double up onto Urshifu here. Shadow Sneak and Spirit Break. Nice. They don't protect. Or Terra. Heatran also notably did not go for a Protector Terra, so that's interesting. I could have gone for a Terra there with Decidueye, but I don't know if it was worth it immediately. I'd probably just lose Decidueye here to a Heat Wave. Let's see. No, they went for Flash Cannon. Okay, nice. Well, if I went for Wide Guard, then that would have been a very bad turn for me, but I think getting rid of Urshifu like that immediately puts me into a really good spot. Especially because our Ceruledge is going to match up pretty well into Heatran. So they're just going to bring Cresselia out. This is a really defensive Cresselia. It does have Rocky Helmet as well. I can obviously close combat into this, but I would expect Heatran to protect now. For example, you could pretty easily just go protect and Trick Room. I think I'm interested in clicking close combat here onto Heatran, going for the Terra with this now. Yeah. We'll Terra this, and then we'll go for Spirit Shackle to prevent Cresselia from switching further. Because I think I need to respect Glastrier being my opponent's final Pokemon right now. But one of the things about Glastrier is it takes a little bit of time to get going, right? And with Glastrier, I also have Flutter Mane, which can just Moonblast into it. And Icicle Crush will deal decent damage into Flutter, but it's not going to get an immediate knockout. They're going to go for a Terra with Heatran. Okay, that makes sense. So it's just going to go for Grass Terra here. Oh! Okay. It's going to be the Cresselia Terrarium. But I'll tell you what, I don't mind that because this is now bait for Ceruledge. And they don't protect Heatran! What?! I'll take it. I assume Trick Room is going up right now. And my opponent can definitely mount a comeback with Glastrier plus Cresselia, so we're not in the clear by any means, but I'll take that turn. Yeah, so I think now it's pretty prime for Glastrier to just come out. Yep, there it is. But the thing is, I think Double Ghost is like the worst nightmare for Glastrier to go up against, quite frankly. Because you just can't body press either of these two Pokemon. So I think I'm happy to just switch out into Ceruledge right now. And I think my goal right now is to just target around the Glastrier and force this to be like a 4v1 essentially in the end game. So I think one thing that's really helped us in this game is the lack of protects on my opponent's Pokemon. They didn't protect Urshifu, they didn't protect Heatran. And yeah, they just go for Icicle Crush here. Perfect. Ceruledge is kind of the perfect Pokemon to have right now. And yeah, Lunar Blessing. But the thing is, basically now with Ceruledge out on the field, I can aggressively target down Cresselia. And our goal is essentially to just time this in a way that we knock out Cresselia right when Trick Room ends. And this is, it doesn't have like high horsepower. You can only body press here. Or go for Icicle Crash and neither really do too much here. So I'm personally happy to just go for Bitter Blade and a Spirit Shackle again. And with double Ghost types right now, I think we're super well positioned. Even if Glastrier is able to get to +6 defense with Iron Defense, a couple things that help us out here, right? Like one, we actually have the high crit chance with Leaf Blade from the Decidueye. And two, we have Flutter Mane as well. So when I use the Glastrier team, I mentioned like Ghost types in general are a pretty big problem, and we have 3 Ghost types with this team, which is really valuable. And look how much damage Bitter Blade does to Cresselia. Now, the Cresselia Terra made sense because they were trying to get around the super effective hit of Spirit Shackle, so I can understand what they were going for there. I wonder if Double Shadow Sneak just gets the KO here. But I don't think Helping Hand Body Press KO Ceruledge here anyway, and Cresselia doesn't really deal damage, so I think it's fine to just Bitter Blade and Spirit Shackle again. Like, I have Flutter Mane in the endgame, so I'm not worried about Glastrier. I can actually just fully ignore it right now. I think we honestly had the perfect counters to it here, right? Like a defensive Terra with the Decidueye and double Ghost types in this matchup. The main thing about this Glastrier is you just don't want it to keep setting up and body pressing everything, but when you have Pokemon that are immune to body press, it makes the matchup so much easier. So, yeah, they just go for Lunar Blessing again, but at this point, it's a 4v1. Trick Room's about to expire, and even at +6 defense, like, I still actually deal pretty decent damage, right? Not to mention, I still have a Flutter Mane waiting in the back to just come out and click Moonblast with that special attack booster as well. So, that's one of the approaches you can take in beating a Pokemon like this, saying, okay, you know what, even if you set up, you don't just beat my team, but that's why Pokemon selection is important, right? Like, this matchup would look pretty different if I didn't bring both of the Ghost types. If I brought, like, Galarian Moltres instead, then Galarian Moltres actually has a really good matchup into us, for example. So, yeah. The trap here, not really relevant. Now it's a 1v4 with the Glastrier, but we have Booster Energy, Flutter Mane, and a lot of ways to hit this for super effective damage. Last turn at Trick Room. I'm happy personally to just Bitter Blade. Bitter Blade and Leaf Blade as well. We'll see if they try to set up again. Nope, they just go for Body Press. Okay. Gets the knockout onto Decidueye, but that's fine. Decidueye isn't really that important at this point in the game, and all I'm waiting to do is basically damage the Glastrier enough where Flutter Mane can come out and just click Moonblast. So, here's Bitter Blade. You can see how bulky Glastrier is, though, right? Okay. One thing that's really nice in this endgame, by the way, is that we have Substitute with Flutter Mane. So I think Glastrier, like as I bring out Flutter Mane here, very likely is going to go for a Protect. By the way, I could have gone for Protect last turn with both of my Pokemon, but I just wanted to get damage on a Glastrier because I think sometimes players are just going to go for another Iron Defense there. But with Flutter coming out now, I think Glastrier is probably going to try to protect for more recovery. You can only hit both of these with Ice School Crash. So I'm happy to just Bitter Blade right now and then go for a substitute. And if you go for a Protect as I sub, I just win the game. Yeah. Because now just 2 Moonblasts and 2 Bitter Blades should get the KO. So one thing that helped us in this matchup is obviously knowing my opponent's team, but Iron Valiant put in so much work just getting the knockouts onto Urshifu as well as Heatran in this game. And then Decidueye was able to chip away. And then Ceruledge being able to, you know, take advantage of the Steel Terror on Cresselia was awesome as well. So with that Protect, there's really no way around this because we just do too much damage. And yeah, you can't win this game quickly enough. So Bitter Blade and Moonblast now. And just 2 of those in conjunction will be enough. There's plus special attack booster, and actually we almost just get the knockout thanks to a crit there. But 2 Moonblasts plus the Bitter Blade damage on top always would have been enough anyway. And the reality is, like, even if my opponent had Ice School Crash the Flutter Mane, like, I can alternate between Sub Protect and there's Ally Switch on Ceruledge, so, like, it's, I wouldn't say 100% impossible for the Glastrier to win this endgame, but I think what makes it really difficult is that, like, even a 1v1 against Ceruledge, a single Bitter Blade critical hit kind of just ruins my opponent, whereas, like, you're kind of just slowly chipping away with Ice School Crash, and you can't body press us either. So, Ghost types are honestly one of the biggest counters to the Glastrier set. That's one thing I ran into when I was using that team, and fortunately for us, the team that we have here obviously has multiple Ghost types that we could take advantage of. So, Ceruledge was really important to winning this game against kind of just walling, like, Cresselia and the Glastrier in the endgame, and I felt like Ceruledge was also just pretty good into Heatran. The main thing we have to obviously worry about is Earth Powers, but one of the things I was considering in this battle was like a defensive Terra with Ceruledge, because then you just can't really do very much with Heatran. So I think Urshifu, in my opinion, was the strongest Pokemon on my opponent's team, and the fact we were able to just knock it out on turn 1 and not get punished at all was what really allowed us to kind of just snowball this game. Okay. This is a Reg C team with Grim, Flutter, Ting-Lu, Orthworm, Dondozo, Tatsugiri. Huh. I haven't fought against the Worm in so long. The Decidueye is a really interesting Dondozo answer because we can just Water Terra and crit with Leaf Blade, which is kind of cool. Gastrodon's a really nice answer for Dondozo as well. So I want to bring these 2. What else do I want to bring? I'm not sure Ceruledge makes that much sense here. I guess it helps if it's like Steel Terradozo, for example. I'm wondering if I need Galarian Moltres right now, because it's pretty weak into Dozo. But it's bulky, and if you Wave Crash, you take a lot of recoil. But I kind of like feel like I need to brute force my way through Dozo, so I'm actually thinking something like the Flutter plus the Iron Valiant with Gastrodon and Decidueye in the back. Yeah, the logic here is like Galarian Moltres doesn't have a very good matchup into Grim, Flutter, or Ting-Lu really, and it doesn't do much into Dondozo either. The main reason I bring Galarian Moltres with this team is to set up Tailwind, but I don't see that much of a reason to set up Tailwind here. The main argument you can make for it is to outpace Dondozo, but I think having Gastrodon is really nice as a tool for Dondozo because we can just absorb any wave crashes, and that means that Dondozo is forced to click, for example, Earthquake or Order Up. It's going to be Flutter and Grim. Okay. So what do I want to do here? Let me get the booster energy. Are they booster as well? Don't see it. Okay. This is a really interesting position, honestly. Like, you probably light screen here. What I can do is Spirit Break here. And just Moonblast into Grim. Could be Specs, though. Specs definitely scary. Like, Spec Shadow Ball right now scares me the most, I'd say. Okay, I'm actually going to Spirit Break Protect. I think the safer play was probably Fairy Terra Flutter. But the idea here is, I know I have Focus Sash. Yep, so they set up Light Screen. This is to cover for Spec Shadow Ball into my Flutter. Okay, they just offer Dazzling Gleam. I'm okay with that, though, because I think I can catch my opponent off guard with this Wide Guard next turn. Yeah. But Spirit Break Moonblast would have worked out fine there. The problem with this is my opponent now gets up 2 screens. Spirit Break did so much there, by the way. I can also just protect here, I guess. I don't necessarily need to Wide Guard, but Wide Guard prevents Flutter from taking damage. It's a shame we don't have Dazzling Gleam, otherwise I could go Fairy, Terra, Dazzle right now. I think I can actually make this hard for my opponent by keeping Grimmsnarl intentionally out on the field. So I'm happy to go for Wide Guard here, and then Moonblast into Flutter. I'm assuming it's Choice Specs Flutter because we did not see a Life Orb, we didn't see a Booster Energy. And I think Specs just makes the most sense as an item here. It could be something like Sash, Timid, Max Speed as well. They actually withdraw Flutter. Interesting. Okay. Into Ting Lu. Huh. Okay, well I get a free Moonblast into that slot. I'll take that. Decidueye is looking pretty sweet right now, by the way. So we get Wide Guard, but they're probably... Oh, interesting. Okay, they're not going to set up a screen here either, but Moonblast does so much damage there. And they're going to Spirit Break into Flutter. Interesting. Okay. This game is not really how I expected it to play out so far, but you didn't set up a Reflect. So I'm down to close combat here. I think this going for a Poison Terror would make sense, though, to me. So part of me is thinking about doubling up on a Grim, just get the knockout onto that instead. This also means that they didn't bring Dondozo, but now I'm actually a little bit worried about my matchup against Orthworm as their final one. So maybe I want to conserve Iron Valiant and actually switch out into, say, Gastrodon. Okay. I am down to go out in a Gastrodon and just Moonblast in a Grim here. I think conserving Valiant for a potential Orthworm 4th is important because I actually can't really hit Orthworm with Gastrodon or Decidueye, which is deeply concerning. That last turn was pretty nice. I could have gotten a lot more if I actually just went like Moonblast and Spirit Break, knock out Grim for free. But there's the Poison Terra indeed on Ting Lu. Gastro will help with Yawn against that. But yeah, the idea is I now realize I have very few Orthworm answers. So Moonblast won't do that much with Light Screen and the Ting Lu out. Still actually does 50, so we'll take it. They go for Spirit Break. Yep. Okay. I think my problem right now is Decidueye is very, very useless. I say that, but actually, we can just Spirit Shackle with it. Yeah, it's not terrible. The main thing is I want to play assuming that Orthworm is my opponent's last Pokemon, because otherwise I think I actually just hard lose to Orthworm, so I'm going to conserve the Iron Valiant until the end. So I'll bring Decidueye out here. I think this turn... I was going to say I'm happy to click Earth Power, but I could see this switching out into Orthworm immediately. If I were my opponent, I would consider switching this out into Orthworm and then Grim just setting up another screen. Unless you have Terra Blast, I don't think this actually scares either of my Pokemon too much. So here I think I'm happy to just get the knockout onto the Grimmsnarl. Yep, there's the switch. Is it Orthworm? Yeah, that's why I conserved Iron Valiant, but I'm pretty scared about playing against this Pokemon in the endgame. Ah, they set up Misty Terrain, which prevents Yawn from working. That's also really cool. Okay. I'll get my Leaf Blade off. And that will just knock out Grim. I mean, maybe I don't have to be that worried about Orthworm. Like, Spirit Shackle actually still does decent damage into the worm, right? The double up there, by the way, was just to cover for something like a Reflect. But that turn ended up being decent for us. I think having Decidueye with Shadow Sneak Pressure is actually really big right now. I think my fear, though, is that Orthworm this next turn can just Shed Tail out. So if I were my opponent, I would bring out Ting Lu right now, and then Shed Tail with Orthworm into the Flutter main. But they actually bring Flutter out immediately. I think that's huge for me. Because that allows me to just Earth Power this slot, and Shadow Sneak this slot. Okay, you're not Specs Flutter. But that's fine, because what is Orthworm going to do? Probably just Shed Tail, right? The fact it's not Specs actually changes a lot, though. Okay. Oh, it's just Heavy Slam. Oh, that did more than I would have liked. It's okay. The way I get around that is Water Terra. I probably should have Water Terra this turn, but I didn't think Orthworm would actually do so much damage to me. Light Screen wears off. Okay, here I think you should switch this out into Ting-Lu, personally. One of the questions I had, by the way, is whether or not Spirit Shackle prevents the Shed Tail from happening. I'm wondering if that's why they didn't Shed Tail. I've actually never seen that interaction before. Okay, I need Shadow Sneak in the endgame against Flutter, so I'm going to protect an Earth Power here. I think they should switch Flutter out. Yeah. So I made that play last year assuming they were Choice Specs Flutter, but... and I think if we get the knockout there, we kind of just win the game. But I think this is still okay. What I'm worried, though, is basically Shed Tail being able to bring Flutter out for free. They do just Heavy Slam us, though. Okay, that's good. Because what I can do now, this next turn, is Terra the Decidueye. Doesn't get the knockout there, but that's fine. 2 turns of Misty Terrain. Okay, so if we think they're going to just Heavy Slam Decidueye again here, what I want to do is switch out into Iron Valiant. Terra here to survive Heavy Slam. And just Spirit Shackle to knock out the Ting-Lu. Like, this is a game-winning play if they just go for Heavy Slam again, because then what I can do is just Shadow Sneak into Flutter, Close Combat into the Earthworm. Gastro ended up being I wouldn't say a fairly useless pick. Like, it was still valuable into Ting-Lu, but a couple surprises here. Okay. So they're staying in. I feel like I just lose if they Shed Tail here, though. Okay. So we get Spirit Shackle off. That should knock out Ting-Lu. Yep. And now if you Heavy Slam into Decidueye again, it's game over, I think. Unless Close Combat doesn't one-shot Earthworm, which I guess also could be the case. Beautiful. Okay. Nice. We held on to our Terra the entire time just to get that play. Okay. Flutter comes out. Now I just Close Combat into you. I think my debate here is, does Close Combat actually one-shot Earthworm? Is there any chance it's bulky enough to survive? Because otherwise my play is to actually double up onto Earthworm right now. I think I could also probably just double Protect here to scout out for a Protect on their end. But that loses to if, like, Fluttermane has Trick Room, I think. Is it really going to have Trick Room here, though? I wouldn't think so. Okay. I'm just going to go for Close Combat and Sneak here. Nice. They don't Protect Flutter. I don't know. I was really worried about Flutter having a surprise Trick Room there, because if you get Trick Room up, Earthworm actually beats my entire team under Trick Room. I didn't want to double Protect and give my opponent that chance. Let's see if that gets the one-hit KO. It actually didn't. Whoa, okay. So if they had actually protected the Fluttermane and Heavy Slammed into Decidueye, I would have lost this one. Not necessarily. I guess I still had Gastrodon in the end game, but I think it would have been really hard. And part of me was actually thinking about predicting the Protect from Flutter and doubling up onto the Earthworm instead. If I had actually double protected there, then Flutter would have been able to protect the subsequent turn. So I wonder if they were reading me into double protecting there. I just wasn't sure about the Close Combat damage calc there into the Earthworm. Misty Terrain also made this harder for me because I couldn't yawn, but Iron Valiant... Like, this is why I needed to conserve it, right? Because otherwise I would have just been completely walled by Earthworm in this end game. But, yeah. A lot of interesting things happening here. Having Decidueye for that priority Shadow Sneak was a really big deal because I think late game Flutter is a concern. Given that they didn't commit to Dondozo, I think if I had brought Galarian Moltres instead, it would have been better because of its matchup into Earthworm, but I suppose it's still really weak into Flutter. I'm just mainly curious about the item on Flutter. I assumed it was Choice Specs after turn 1 because we didn't see a Booster, we didn't see a Life Orb, so it wasn't Booster, Life Orb, or Specs. Could be Pixie Plate. I think that's also a reasonable item, but yeah, that was definitely a scary game. Alright, this looks like the 6 that Wolf Glick used to finish second at the Pittsburg Regional Championships. So if it's that version of the team, then it's clear Amulet Landorus. It is Speed Booster Flutter with Icy Wind, Specs Chi-Yu, Swords Dance Water Urshifu, AV Hands. Most players don't bring Water Urshifu against this team because of the existence of Gastrodon. I think Flutter Chi-Yu is definitely the scariest combination to go up against. Against Flutter Chi-Yu, I normally go Galarian Moltres and then Terra turn 1. Yeah, like I generally like Iron Valiant plus Galarian Moltres because it kind of forces Chi-Yu to Terra. So I go with this duo. What do I want in the back? I think Flutter generally has good damage output. Clear Amulet here with the Ceruledge is tempting. Bitter Blade into Amoonguss is very good. Gastro's honestly not bad. My problem with it is its matchup into Flutter Chi-Yu. Like, it's a little bit too slow-paced for my liking. Okay. I'm actually going to bring Decidueye, and the main reason for bringing Decidueye is that I want a switch-in into Amoonguss specifically, because otherwise Amoonguss can cause some pretty big issues. But if I bring Decidueye, what I can do is just protect one Pokemon, switch the other one into Decidueye, and then you can't get a sleep off for that turn. Whereas if I bring Ceruledge, I just have no sleep answers. Hands Chi-Yu. Okay. I'm alright with this. I think turn 1, we just double protect and then see what Chi-Yu locks itself into, assuming it's Spexed. Might be a different version of the team. Double protect. Turn 2 then. Like, I would love to force out a Terra here, but I don't think you need to Terra on turn 1. I think if you're my opponent, you can pretty easily just fake out into Iron Valiant and then just overheat into Galarian Moltres. The idea behind this is then next turn I pressure with close combat onto Chi-Yu, Fire Terra, Tailwind with Galarian Moltres. I would expect then to retaliate back by tearing their Chi-Yu into Ghost to get around my close combat. But Chi-Yu actually hard switches. Okay. Into Landorus. That makes sense. Landorus is pretty scary here, honestly. It's a really nice turn 1 play by my opponent. Yeah, it's like Gastrodon would have been really good against the 3 that my opponent brought so far. They actually just straight up Wild Charge into Galarian Moltres. Okay. Yeah, I don't love that Valiant's stuck at -1 right now in this position. What I can do is Terra defensively here to survive Wild Charge, Tailwind, and Spirit Break. My problem with Terraing here, like, I'm not even sure it's worth it. It might be better to just Fairy Terra Flutter and try to Moonblast everything. Because I outspeed Iron Hands here anyway, right? So, yeah, I'm actually thinking of just Tailwinding and then Spirit Breaking into Iron Hands. No Terra, no Switch, no Protect, huh? Not what I expected, but we get Spirit Break off. Not for much damage, though. Valiant U-turns. Or sorry, Landorus U-turns into Valiant. Okay. I'm very happy with that. I was expecting something like Flying Terra and then Terra Blast Wild Charge into Moltres. And the reason I didn't want to Terra with my Galarian Moltres there is because I don't want to become weak to Stomping Tantrum from the Landorus. So we get Tailwind up, which is great. Speed control is really valuable here. Wild Charge, okay. Beautiful. That does not KO us and activates Berserk and Citrus Berry as well. Cool. So that was a good turn, I would say. This turn is interesting. Assuming this is Specs Chi-Yu, you could switch this back out onto Landorus. Part of me wants to double protect here. The thing about double protecting is, like, I do have Tailwind up right now, right? So by double protecting, I kind of just waste a turn of my own Tailwind. I think, like, personally, I'm thinking about going for Fiery Wrath here. And close combat onto Chi-Yu. But I'm worried about this going for, like, Ghost Terra Heat Wave. Okay, I'm actually going to go for the double protect, because I think scouting out for what the Chi-Yu slot wants to do is a really big deal, and it does switch. I would think back out into Landorus. Yeah. I could have pushed the tempo of the game there by doubling up onto Iron Hands, Air Slash Spirit Break. The reason I didn't do that was out of fear Iron Hand switches out and then Chi-Yu just gets a Heat Wave off and knocks out both of my Pokemon. I think that would be really bad. But I think if there's so far one turn I can point to where I could have improved my play, it would have been this last turn. Yeah, so they Wild Charge. I think here I'm just going to double up on Iron Hands. And Close Combat does more, right? With... No. We have same type attack bonus on Spirit Break as well. Okay. So I'll Air Slash and Spirit. I guess my fear here is that the Hands actually survives the Air Slash at +1 and Spirit Break. It honestly might. Like, I made the play last turn assuming I get the knockout here, but if not, that's really bad. And what I could have done last turn was just make the same play anyway, right? So... I think it should get the KO at +1. Let's see. Okay, good. So that's good at least. We get the knockout there. Landorus goes for Stomping. Valiant survives. This is a free switch in for Flutter now if you have it, I think. Yep. Maybe Decidueye wasn't it then. Ceruledge would have been better probably. Booster. Yep. Oh, it's special attack. It's not speed. Huh. That makes the battle of the Flutter mains very interesting. Still don't know the item on Chi-Yu either. I think I'm happy to go for Fiery Wrath here. Fiery Wrath, and I think Protect. Valiant's just kind of in an awkward spot right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they just protect their Flutter, right? Yeah. Does Landers have Protect? It does not, or at least doesn't go for it. Okay. We got a crit. Nice Rock Tomb. So that's Assault Vest Landers, I'm pretty sure. Oh, okay. So if you're AV, Chi-Yu in the back, it could be Scarf Chi-Yu. Scarf Chi-Yu would be a nightmare for me right now. And that was a missed opportunity to switch my Iron Valiant out. I might just have to give up both Pokemon here, which stings. Like, I can go for a Hail Mary, Tailwind plus Wide Guard right now, but given that they have Rock Tomb, that's really bad news for us, but I'll try. Like, Wide Guard is one of those moves that can just win you the game single-handedly because your opponents don't expect it. But they smartly Moonblast. Nicely done. It's one of those where it's like, I don't have anything else to go for, right? So if they mess up and go for, like, Dazzle and Rock Slide for some reason, that would actually put us in really good shape. I could have potentially considered tearing the Moltres there. Yeah, my problem right now is I think I just get outsped by my opponent. I don't know how fast their Flutter is, though. It is special attack boosting rather than speed boosting. Maybe Ceruledge would have been better for me in this endgame, but I think the main thing is I just didn't take advantage of my Tailwind. And that one wasted turn that I was talking about because I was worried about Chi-Yu staying in and Heat Waving was really critical. Because I could have just knocked out Iron Hands there and just accelerated the pace of the battle. And one extra turn of Tailwind would have given me a lot of room to work with in this game. The other question is, do you just switch out into Landorus right now? I think I want to double protect here. I don't want to commit my Terra yet. I want to see what they do with Chi-Yu specifically. Double protect. I mean, Landorus could switch in here. And I could play towards a Okay, yeah, we finally get the Terra out. I would think it's Flutter going for Terra here. Yeah. This is going to be really close. I think... but if their Chi-Yu is Choice Scarf, I just lose this game for sure, I would think. Oh, not necessarily, because what I could do is, like... Water Terra Decidueye, Shadow Sneak Moonblast, their Flutter. And their Flutter does move first. And they Moonblast into us. Okay. And Heat Wave. So, here I can go for Fairy Terra. Do I just hope that my Flutter is faster here? Like, how do I win this game if their Flutter is faster? I don't really see too much of an answer. What I want to do is Moonblast Chi-Yu here and Shadow Sneak it. I'm not sure Moonblast just gets the KO, like, in itself. Alright, I'll go for the double up on a Chi-Yu. I'm also worried about it being Focus Sash Chi-Yu. It's clearly not Choice Scarfed here. I'm not sure I needed a Shadow Sneak is the main thing, but without knowing the spread on Chi-Yu, I'm a little sussed. Okay. No Protect. No switches. Shadow Sneak breaks a potential Sash there. We do have the faster Flutter. But does Moonblast get the KO here? No, we had that if it KOs, I think. Assuming, because it was Assault Vest Lander, so basically, the way this would have played out... Oh, man. Wow, that was so close. The way that would have played out if we get the knockout there is Chi-Yu feints, Landorus comes out, I have the faster Flutter, we survive the Moonblast, so then I Moonblast again into their Landorus slot. Actually, I probably still lose, because... I don't think Spirit Shackle into Shadow Sneak. Yeah, there's no way that actually would do enough. No, but we would go for the Leaf Blade crit. Yeah, so it actually would probably be a 50-50 in that endgame if I had gotten the knockout, because Decidueye has a 50% chance to crit with our combination. So the idea is that Moonblast knocks out Shadow Sneak plus Moonblast knocks out Chi-Yu. You bring out Landorus. I just Moonblast to knock out your Landorus. You go for probably Dazzling Gleam, and then I just go Leaf Blade onto the Decidueye, from Decidueye onto Flutter. If we get the critical hit there, that might just get the knockout, but even if not, I would think Leaf Blade into a Shadow Sneak if the Leaf Blade crits is enough to get the KO. So, yeah. That was so darn close, but that's why I also went for Shadow Sneak, because I figured Chi-Yu would survive. I just didn't think it would have survived the double up there, but Chi-Yu, of course, has pretty good resistances to that Shadow Sneak, so we're not doing that much damage with it, but what a game that was. Yeah, I think the main turn I can point to in this battle was playing pretty passively once I had set up Tailwind and going for that double protect. Like I said, I was worried about doubling up onto Iron Hands, letting Chi-Yu just get a free Heat Wave off, and then knocking out both my Pokemon. I think Iron Valiant in this game just didn't look very good either, because my opponent was able to get that Intimidate with Landorus consecutively into it, and Valiant was kind of just stuck on the field, not doing very much damage. In terms of Pokemon selection, I think you could make an argument for Gastrodon, but basically the problem with Gastrodon is it takes so much damage from Choice Specs Chi-Yu with Dark Pulse as well as Moonblast from Flutter Main. So yeah, I think like the endgame I was trying to play towards was a Fairy Terra, Booster, Flutter, Special Attack, you know, Moonblast into everything. But it just so happens their Chi-Yu was bulky enough to actually survive that double up. So yeah, if I had gotten just a little bit of a higher damage roll there, a little bit more damage, that game I think would look pretty differently. But would have loved to get that end game where it comes down to whether or not Decidueye can get that Leaf Blade critical hit onto Flutter. I think in terms of other things, you know, Pokemon selection wise, could Ceruledge have done anything for us there instead of Decidueye? Because Ceruledge would have been immune to the Heat Wave, and with Clear Amulet. The problem with Ceruledge is I think it still loses the endgame against Flutter, because you just Shadow Ball KO us, whereas with Decidueye, like, I can crit with that Leaf Blade to try to get a one-hit knockout. So I actually don't really regret bringing the Pokemon I brought in this battle. I think I just could have executed a little bit better, and it started from turn 1. I think great switch by my opponent immediately to get Landorus in, and I just, like, wasn't able to put on as much offensive pressure as would have liked after setting up Tailwind. But, yeah. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. So thank you so much as always for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this really fun team with all these unique picks like Decidueye, Ceruledge, as well as the Galarian Moltres play out. And it was really cool to use Decidueye specifically, but I had a lot of fun, obviously, with all of the Pokemon. So yeah, leave a like if you enjoy, and I'll see you all next time. All right, peace.